Hello, everybody, and happy Friday.
Woohoo!
Woo. Welcome to Get Booked April, right? We're in April. Oh my God. Time is moving so fast. We have some new things that we are going to talk about this month. Jen, you want to fill us in on what this month is and what we're going to talk about today?
So April is National Poetry Month, so we're celebrating poetry.
Woohoo!
Yeah, our books are a little bit different because they're not like poetry books, but they're novels in verse, which is really cool. I like the novels in verse.
I couldn't do it for one of them. I did pick one poem, like a poetry book, but yeah, I know. It's hard. Sometimes it was difficult.
It is. The adult ones are hard. I kind of cheated at the adult book. So I think that novels in verse became really popular in YA with Ellen Hopkins and Sonia Soames, probably around, I want to say the 2000s, early 2000s. Crank came out, What Your Mother Doesn't Know came out, and then those kind of spiraled into series by the same authors, and then other authors were like, oh, hey, this format's kind of neat. Let me try that. So it's a really cool. I like it a lot. And then like the kids' books have kind of gotten into it a little bit too, which is nice.
I think so Ellen Hopkins, I'm not going to talk about, I didn't pull one today, but Ellen Hopkins specifically like invigorated my like love of poetry or attempt to be a poet. So I would write poems that were inspired like in the way that Ellen Hopkins wrote. So if you haven't read her, totally give her a try because it's so different than what you would normally expect.
It is. Right? It is. And the thing that sometimes people might think about, so I'm just going to show, like, so you look at that when you're reading and you think, oh, that's not going to have like a lot of meat to it, maybe. Like it's going to be a really quick read, which it is, but they often do have a lot of meat to them. And sometimes the poems are different. I'll show you that in the kids' book I have. They kind of play around with different poetry formats, and it's a really neat way to read a book, I think.
Yeah, it expands your mind or expands how you would normally think about the words.
It does, yes. Good point.
It's really cool. All right, what do you have? Okay, all right. So my kids' pick, woohoo, is Mountain Dog by Margarita Engle. And it's a story about a boy and a dog who go on the adventure of a lifetime. So when Tony's mom is sent to prison, he goes to Sierra Nevada to live with a great uncle who he has never met before. It's pretty devastating for a kid, right? Like, can't imagine. New place, new family. So this new world is completely different than what he is used to. He ends up befriending his uncle. His great uncle's like, he's like a search and rescue dog named Gabe. And so together, Gabe helps Tony learn the skills he needs to survive in the wilderness. And he also ends up opening himself up to an unexpected future in life. And I'll just show you, this one's written pretty standard in specific verses. It's not anything crazy, but I do love it when we get just one word all the way down in poems. It really like emphasizes each line. It's really cool. What do you got?
It does. So mine is called Dawn Fishing. This is Tamera Wissinger. And the illustrator is Matthew Cordell, who illustrates a lot of picture books and actually has his own like easy chapter series that just started, like Cornbread and Poppy, which is really fun. So this one is really interesting. It's about it's about a family, and the brother's name is Sam, and he wants to go fishing with his dad. And it's just supposed to be the two of them. And then the morning of, his little sister Lucy decides she's coming, and he's so mad because it's just supposed to be their time. Which, as a younger sibling, like, I can relate to Lucy.
But... And I can relate to the older.
So this is what I mean. This is...
I love it.
Yeah, so you can see the fish, and they talk about how this is a concrete poem.
Oh, nice.
So a lot of the pictures of the story are illustrated, and this is where the sister's like, can I come too? And the father's like, of course. And the brother's like... And I won't tell you what happens when she comes along, but of course there's, you know, bad moments, but the good moments too. So kind of sibling rivalry, going fishing, being outdoors.
I love it. I love the fish. That's great. So my teen pick is actually, it's Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. And it's a book that holds a lot of grief and love. So we read about loss and how hard it is to forgive and about the bonds that end up shaping our lives. So Camino Rios loves her summers when her father comes to visit her in the Dominican Republic. But this time she heads to the airport and she gets there and she just sees crowds of people crying. Meanwhile, miles away in New York, Yahaira Rios is called to the principal's office, and her mother is waiting to tell her some pretty devastating news. I'm not going to say what happens. These girls, though, are separated by distance and their father's secrets. And they're forced to face like this new reality. So when they think that they have lost completely everything, the question is, can they heal and learn from each other? You know, it's so good. And it's definitely like more traditional. She does this kind of like 2 line at a time thing. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's like, it really tugs. It gets you.
I like those. I think a lot of the poetry books do kind of tug at you more because you're more,
you're more invested in it. Yeah. Okay, so I think a little bit, one more thing. It's deliberate. Every single thing, not that a regular novel is not deliberate, but like the banter or she said or he said or the explanation of a play, like it's not as deliberate as it is in a poem, I think sometimes. Like I think it comes across differently.
I do too. Yeah. It packs more of a punch sometimes too, because you see like those single sentence words or single word sentences and you're like, oh, yeah, and that just hits a little harder.
You notice when something's italicized, like it's stuff like that you notice easier, I think.
All right, so mine is Starfish. This is Lisa Fipps. This is my teen pick, but it's actually middle grade. And I've forgotten her name, Ellie. So ever since 5th grade, at a birthday party, Ellie wore a bathing suit and she was bullied for being fat. So she decided that she was going to create the Fat Girl Rules, which was all about being small and not standing out. So she kind of changed her life and changed who she was a little bit. And then over the summer, she's in her swimming pool and she realizes that she can sort of be free and she can be a starfish and she can take up all the space that she wants to. And there's a new girl who moves next door, her neighbor, and she's very non-judgmental, which Ellie finds refreshing. And Ellie has a new therapist who is sort of sharing different ideas with her. So she's sort of becoming a little bit more self-confident and saying, no, that's not how things are going to be anymore. This is more of the traditional poetry. This was really great. I just loved this book. It's one of my favorites from last year.
Okay, so my adult pick is an actual poem.
The adult ones are hard. They don't have a lot of adult novels.
They really are. Okay. And like I don't need to talk about this one because it's so famous, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because it's what I picked. So this is Howl and Other Poems by Allen Ginsberg. Some would say this is a must read, a classic. It's like considered one of the like world's great works of literature or whatever. And it speaks to literary movements where the authors discuss like American culture and politics, specifically like the Beat movement. So Ginsberg was encouraged to write from his heart and free his voice when he wrote this. He attempted to write Howl with like no restrictions. It was written in the 1950s, and it talks about stories and experiences that Ginsberg had with his friends, which includes some of the greatest minds that, or literary minds that the world has ever seen. Yeah, it's short. It's like, it's very tiny. And then absolutely like experiences different things that were happening culture-wise, people-wise, I won't give too much away, but like if you haven't read it, it's a very quick read and definitely recommended.
So I cheated on my adult one too. I picked Shout by Laurie Halse Anderson. This is sort of an adult book. We shelve it in the teen section because this is the follow-up to Speak. So if this is a memoir, this is Laurie's story. Speak was kind of Laurie's story, but this one is more autobiographical. And it does have some, sorry?
It parallels her actual life more than
right. It does have some hard moments to read. So it's not for the faint of heart, and it is better if you have read Speak to read this. Again, it's very similar. Poetry is not quite like this one where it plays with different ones. So it starts in her childhood. There are some not great moments. Her parents are not great. They're kind of awful at times. They're nice at times too. And they talk about those moments as well. So Laurie was raped when she was 13. It does talk about that moment. It's not graphic, but it does go into the moment where it happened. And then the boy died, which is different. He died soon after. She did go to his funeral and thought that would kind of be closure, but it really wasn't. So this is talking about like her closure and how like this episode has haunted her and kind of how she's moving on from that. And it kind of talks about her downward spiral as she doesn't really deal with it that well. And then she kind of realizes that she has to. So it's really powerful. It's sometimes hard to read. And again, if you haven't read Speak, I would read Speak before this. And there is a graphic novel, Speak, which is a pretty good adaptation of graphic novels from the book. And there is a movie as well. So it's a big area.
Did you like the movie? Because like I'm not. Isn't it Kristen Stewart?
It is Kristen Stewart. I didn't
like before Twilight. We're talking, right? Like it what, right?
I think it was.
Or was it right around the same time? Now I'm gonna look it up.
I didn't love the movie, but I didn't hate it. I thought it had a lot of good points across.
It's before Twilight.
Is it before Twilight? Okay. I thought it had some good points. I thought there were some parts that worked better for the movie than it did the book. It's always hard to adapt because like you fall in love with the book first and then you're like, oh, but so.
Yep. Okay. That was kind of a sad ending, Jen.
Sorry.
I'm gonna go eat an Oreo and make myself feel better. We will be back in 2 weeks. I think we're going to talk about something
pleasant,
green,
outdoors, naturey,
right?
We're talking about flowers and gardens and
gardening. Because I'm super ready to. I'm seeing all the daffodils come up. Are they they're daffodils, right?
Yep.
They're all coming up now. Super exciting. Super happy to see just bright bursts of color finally.
It is nice, and the weather's starting to get warm, which is fantastic.
I know. Next week. How's that?
I know.
All right. So we will see y'all.
See you in 2 weeks.
Sounds good. Have a good weekend.
Happy reading.